Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, casting a golden hue over the marble counters as Evelyn Reed carefully packed Daniel's lunch. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the soft hum of the morning radio, filling the house with quiet warmth. She hummed as she tucked a small folded note into his lunchbox, her daily ritual. "Every heartbeat of mine belongs to you and our baby," she had written in her neat, looping handwriting, smiling at the thought of his reaction later. Daniel, dressed sharply in a navy suit, leaned down to kiss her forehead, his hand instinctively resting on her small baby bump. They laughed over their usual morning chatter, her teasing him about forgetting his keys, his promise to come home early. Outside, the driveway glistened after a light drizzle, and their silver car waited like a symbol of their perfect life. Evelyn waved as Daniel drove away, clutching her stomach tenderly, feeling their child's faint movement. It was an ordinary morning wrapped in love, the kind that feels timeless. Neither of them knew that within hours, the world they'd built together would turn to smoke and sirens, and that gentle note would become Daniel's most painful memory. The evening unfolded like a nightmare Daniel couldn't wake from. He had just wrapped up a late meeting when his phone rang, a number he didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end froze his heart. "Mr. Reed, there's been an accident, your wife's car." His breath caught as the caller mentioned the location, a deserted highway just outside the city. Daniel sped through traffic, his hands trembling on the wheel, whispering her name over and over as if she could hear him. When he arrived, the acrid scent of burning metal filled the air. Firefighters swarmed the scene, their shouts blending with the crackle of flames devouring what was once Evelyn's car. The heat was suffocating, the wreck unrecognizable, a twisted skeleton of steel and ash. A police officer stopped him from running closer. "Sir, please, it's too dangerous." Daniel's eyes locked on a familiar glint amid the debris, Evelyn's silver bracelet, the one he'd gifted her on their anniversary. His knees gave out as realization struck. Hours later, investigators confirmed traces of her jewelry and fabric matching her dress were found inside. The official report was grim. Evelyn Reed, presumed dead in a car explosion of unknown cause. By dawn, headlines screamed across every screen, "Pregnant woman dies in mysterious car explosion, husband devastated." Daniel sat in silence on the hospital steps, staring into the smoke-stained horizon. His world had ended in fire, and nothing made sense anymore. The once warm and lively Reed home had turned into a grave of memories. Days bled into weeks, and Daniel existed in a haze of silence and shadows. Every corner echoed with traces of Evelyn, her laughter trapped in the walls, her scent still clinging to the sheets. He spent hours sitting on the nursery floor, surrounded by the things she'd lovingly prepared, a crib draped in soft yellow fabric, tiny shoes lined neatly on the dresser, and a mobile of stars she had painted by hand. Now, the pastel walls that once symbolized joy felt like cruel reminders of a life stolen too soon. At night, he wandered through the hallways with Evelyn's maternity dress pressed against his chest, tears soaking the fabric. Sleep brought no peace, only dreams where she whispered his name and said words that lingered like smoke. "Don't believe everything you see." The police had closed the investigation quickly, calling it an accidental fire caused by fuel leakage. But the explanation gnawed at Daniel's mind. Evelyn had always been careful, too careful. Something about it didn't fit. The missing traffic footage, the lack of witnesses, the strange speed of the report, it all screamed of something deeper. Doubt began to replace grief, and suspicion quietly took root. As Daniel carefully lifted the painting from the wall, dust fell like ash from forgotten years. Behind it, his trembling fingers brushed against something wedged into the frame, an old yellowed envelope, sealed with Evelyn's familiar handwriting. His heart pounded as he tore it open. Inside was a faded photograph of Evelyn standing beside a man he didn't recognize, tall, sharp-featured, his arm casually draped around her shoulder. But what froze Daniel's breath was the note tucked behind the photo. "Some truths can destroy everything." For several long minutes, Daniel just stared, his mind reeling. Evelyn had never mentioned anyone like this. Who was the man? A friend? A lover? A secret from before their marriage? The handwriting was undeniably hers, the message, chillingly deliberate. The photo felt like a crack opening in his perfect memories. Grief gave way to suspicion, and suspicion soon turned into a dark, consuming obsession. Daniel sat in his dimly lit study, surrounded by Evelyn's belongings, when his phone buzzed. The name on the screen froze him: Detective Lydia Harris. They hadn't spoken since the investigation ended. Her voice, low and measured, carried a weight that made his stomach twist. "Mr. Reed," she began, "I need to tell you something off the record." She paused, as if choosing each word carefully. "Your wife's accident, it didn't add up. The explosion looked staged." Daniel's heart skipped. "Staged? What are you saying?" Harris exhaled. "We found no conclusive remains, the DNA tests were contaminated. But the case was shut down fast, by people above my pay grade." Her tone hardened. "Your wife might not have died, Daniel. She could have been running from something, or someone." Silence filled the line. Daniel's hand trembled as her words echoed in his mind. Evelyn, running? From him? Or from a secret he didn't know existed? The detective's final words were almost a whisper. "If you want answers, start by asking why they wanted the case buried so quickly." Then she hung up, leaving Daniel staring at the shadows around him, his grief morphing into fear. Dust floated through the dim attic light as Daniel pried open another crate, his hands trembling from exhaustion and memory. The scent of old wood and forgotten years filled the air. He only wanted a distraction, to fix, to build, anything to silence the ache. But when his hammer struck a loose floorboard, something hollow echoed beneath. Curious, he knelt, pried it open, and pulled out a small, leather-bound book coated in dust. His breath caught the moment he saw her handwriting, elegant, familiar, undeniably Evelyn's. The lock gave way under a trembling hand. The first few pages made him smile through tears, her excitement about motherhood, sketches of nursery ideas, tiny notes like, "Daniel smiled when the baby kicked today." But as the pages turned, her words began to tremble. "Someone's been calling me from an unknown number." Another line, "A black car waits near the school every day." Then came the final entry, the ink slightly smudged, as if written in haste. "If you're reading this, Daniel, it means I'm gone. But not the way you think." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. The attic seemed to close in around him. She wasn't just a victim, she had known what was coming. And now, it was up to him to uncover what she'd been running from. Daniel's eyes darted over the diary pages, every word slicing deeper than the last. Evelyn hadn't just been frightened, she'd been hunted. The entries detailed how she'd stumbled upon falsified contracts, hidden offshore accounts, and mysterious cash transfers linked to Daniel's business partner, Victor Hale. She tried to warn Daniel, but every time she came close, someone from the company would conveniently drop by or call her away. The next page trembled beneath his fingertips. "Victor knows I saw the files. He told me accidents happen all the time, especially to emotional pregnant women. I can't risk telling Daniel, he's too close to them. If I vanish, he'll look guilty." Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He read on. Evelyn had sought help from a private investigator, a man named Carter Wynne. Her last note about him read, "He said there's only one way to disappear, to die publicly." Daniel dropped the diary, realization crashing over him. The explosion, the ashes, the jewelry, the staged scene, it wasn't murder. It was a cover. Evelyn hadn't been killed, she had vanished on purpose. Daniel's hands trembled as the video played on the detective's laptop, each pixel flickering like a heartbeat from the past. The timestamp matched the night of the explosion exactly. There she was, Evelyn, walking across the dimly lit gas station lot, wearing the same floral maternity dress she'd worn that day. Her hair was tied the same way he remembered, her steps careful, one hand resting protectively over her belly. Then came the moment that shattered everything he thought he knew. A black SUV pulled up beside her. The driver stepped out, face obscured by a hood. Evelyn hesitated, looking around nervously before opening the door and climbing inside. Minutes later, a distant flash lit up the horizon, her car erupting into a ball of fire. Daniel froze, his heart pounding. She planned this, he whispered, barely breathing. Detective Harris nodded gravely. Looks that way. But the question is, why hasn't she come back? Daniel couldn't answer. His mind raced through every memory, every smile, every note she'd left. If she had survived, then something, or someone, was still keeping her away. And now, he needed to know who was helping her, and who was still hunting her. Daniel's mind raced as he scribbled Mark Holden's name from the diary onto a notepad. Every lead pointed toward the private investigator who had promised Evelyn safety. He drove to the address listed in her notes, a worn brick building tucked between abandoned warehouses. The office was deserted, dust thick on the windows, papers scattered as if abandoned in a hurry. He rifled through drawers and cabinets, heart hammering in his chest, until a folder marked confidential caught his eye. Inside were files detailing people who had vanished under suspicious circumstances, victims of corporate corruption and personal threats. Among them, he found Evelyn's case meticulously documented. Flight plans, new identities, financial transfers, and coded notes about surveillance measures. Daniel's chest tightened as the truth hit him. Evelyn hadn't disappeared out of fear of him. She had acted to protect herself and him from the dangerous web surrounding his business. The diary, the explosion, the careful planning, all of it was a shield, keeping her unborn child safe from people willing to kill for profit. He leaned against the dusty wall, realizing that the woman he thought he'd lost had been alive, clever, and courageous the whole time, waiting for the moment the city's secrets could no longer touch her. Daniel's heart raced as the tires crunched over the gravel path leading to the mountain cottage. The air was crisp, the scent of pine heavy, yet a strange calm hung over the place. He pushed open the creaking door and froze. The living room looked exactly as Evelyn had described in her diary, a cozy fireplace, hand-stitched cushions, and a framed photo of the two of them smiling, oblivious to the dangers that had once loomed. Every detail whispered of her careful planning, her attempt to carve a sanctuary where no one could harm her or their child. Then came the sound of soft footsteps behind him. He turned slowly, heart in his throat, and there she was, Evelyn, alive, radiant despite everything. She studied him for a long moment, a small, knowing smile forming on her lips. Daniel's knees nearly gave way as relief and disbelief collided. She was real. She was safe. And she was there. Finally, truly there. Evelyn's shoulders shook as tears streamed down her face, and she clutched her empty belly, a silent testament to the child they had lost. The weight of months spent in hiding, of every calculated move to stay alive, finally broke her. I survived the explosion. I gave birth, she confessed, voice trembling. But, our baby didn't make it. Daniel fell to his knees, unable to contain the torrent of grief and relief flooding through him. His hands reached for hers, desperate, shaking. You were my whole life, he choked out, voice breaking. She shook her head gently, sorrow etched into every line of her face. And you were the only one I couldn't save, she whispered. For a long moment, they clung together, grief and love intertwining. Despite the tragedy, despite the loss, the reunion held a fragile hope, a second chance at life together, born from survival, courage, and unwavering devotion. Daniel and Evelyn sat side by side, carefully organizing the diary entries and Mark Holden's files, each document a puzzle piece revealing the dark web surrounding his business partners. With trembling hands, they handed everything over to Detective Lydia Harris. Her eyes widened as she skimmed through the detailed accounts of threats, hidden accounts, and illegal dealings. Within weeks, the investigation unraveled the corruption. Key partners were arrested, their schemes dismantled, and the city buzzed with news of justice served. Evelyn felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Her meticulous planning and painful sacrifices had not been in vain. Yet, even as the external danger vanished, the emotional scars remained. Daniel reached for her hand, but there was a cautious distance, an unspoken acknowledgement of the months lost, the child they could not save, and the trust they had to rebuild. Freedom had come, but healing would take time. Evelyn sat by the window of her countryside cottage, pen in hand, the golden light of late afternoon spilling across her desk. She opened a fresh page in her new diary, her thoughts turning to the child they had lost and the trials that had tested their love. Carefully, she wrote of survival, resilience, and the bond that endured beyond betrayal, fire, and fear. She concluded the entry with words that captured her journey. Sometimes, you have to burn a life to save a soul. Each weekend, Daniel arrived, carrying a quiet gratitude and lingering shadows of the past. They shared long walks, soft conversations, and moments of silent understanding, both haunted yet comforted by the fact that she had lived. In the city, headlines dubbed the case the miracle disappearance, but Evelyn paid them no mind. For her, life was now about the simple act of breathing, free from the chains of fear and deceit.